Hey guys, so this is going to be a video response to Inner Divine Tarot. I recently found her channel through the suggestion of Lisa from Supportive Tarot, and she did a video on her journey to the goddess. And this came at a coincidental time because I have actually been having all these random memories pop up from when I was a kid of just like witchy things that I did. And I kind of wanted to talk about it, and then I saw this video and I was like, this is perfect, because then I can kind of incorporate the two and tell an interesting story. Also, I'm sorry if you hear me clear my throat or sneeze. My allergy season's starting to ramp up, so you know how it goes. So this is going to go in chronological order, and I actually made notes. I know, weird, I made notes. This is like the first time I've ever made notes for a video. The other thing that I quickly wanted to say was that if you are not subscribed to Inner Divine Tarot or Supportive Tarot, those two ladies are amazing. I love watching their channels. I really enjoy their videos. I will put the link to them both down below. And the other thing I quickly wanted to mention is that this is the third time I've tried to film this video, so hopefully it'll go well. It might be a long one. I'm going to try and be as quick as I can, but as thorough as I can, if that's even a possibility. So the thing that I wanted to start out with is that I remember I have this distinct memory as a kid of having this presence of, that's Prude the Tank, having this presence of Mother Earth, having this sense of Mother Earth and this awareness of Mother Earth. I probably actually should have started out mentioning that I was not raised under any religion. My parents basically told me that religion was a personal choice, and everybody kind of has their own idea of how religion should go, I guess, and just kind of what works for them. And it was nice to be raised that way because it taught me to be open-minded and it taught me to be tolerant. I did have some experience with Christianity, and I'll get into that in a bit here, but it's interesting because I have such a memory of being pulled to Mother Earth. And when I was a kid, I loved mythology. I loved learning about mythology. I thought mythology was really fascinating. I loved the fact that there was more than one deity. I loved the fact that there were stories, and I don't know, just something about it was very intriguing to me. I had some interest in Egyptian mythology. I had an older sibling who also had interest in that as well, so I had a little bit of a pull towards that, but there's an experience linked to that, which I'll get into, but I'm going to try and go in as much chronological order as I can without being so completely frazzled. So the first thing I wanted to mention was this book. This was a book that my grandparents owned. This is not the original copy that they owned. That actually got lost at the time, and then a handful of years back I was at a used book fair and I found this again, and I was like, holy crap! This book is like a weird pinnacle of my childhood. They used to have it and I would just look through it obsessively. I love, it's a National Geographic book. I love all things involving space and space travel and NASA and astronomy, and I've been fascinated with that stuff since I was a kid, and this book I think had a huge hand in it. But the other interesting thing about it is it also, I really do believe, had a hand in my pagan path and my love for mythology. Here, I'll show you. So for each planet, it had facts about it. But the interesting thing is, it had the deities that it was named after. So I thought that was really cool. And I remember that like piquing my interest. Let's see if I can quickly find Earth. Let's see, there's Venus. Yeah, I remember the image for Earth too, and I really think that this might have been what sparked like the Mother Earth thing for me, maybe. I'm not quite sure, but I love this book. It's incredible, and it's like just a relic from my childhood. Even though this isn't the original copy that my grandparents owned, it's still the same book. It's still from the 80s, like it's still that era. So I think that had a huge hand in all of that for sure. And I just felt like I had to mention it. The other thing that I wanted to mention, sorry, I'm just going over my notes, is I had mentioned the, oh, I wish this was more articulate, but it's just not happening today, guys. I'm so sorry. I'm doing the best I can. I had a best friend who was, growing up, who was a very devout Christian, and through her I had my experiences with Christianity. I went to church with her for a while. I attended Sunday school. I learned about Christianity, and I also learned that it wasn't for me in that time, which I actually am thankful for that experience, because I got to be exposed to it and I got to understand it, but I also got to understand that it wasn't for me. But I do remember having this distinct experience once where I was talking about the Sphinx, and being a kid, I remember using the word worship. And she looked at me and she was like, well, the only one that you should worship is God. And I just remember thinking, that doesn't feel right. Even then, and I was probably like 6, maybe 7 years old, and it just did not feel right to me. And I remember thinking, that might be right for you, but it's not for me. And it's crazy looking that far back and having that experience. So there's that. And then the other one that I wanted to mention, I was thinking about this actually came up and popped into my head over Beltane, is when I was growing up, my family in my front yard had this gigantic rhododendron bush. And if you guys don't know, the rhododendron is Washington State's flower. Well, I remember on Beltane one year, I took rhododendrons and I made these baskets out of paper, and I made flower baskets and I put them on my neighbor's doorsteps. And I don't even know why I did this. It just was like something that I did. But like, how witchy is that? How witchy is that? It's just so funny. So I had to mention that. And then the other thing is that growing up in Washington State, my parents took me camping all over basically the Pacific Northwest, and then Idaho, Montana, Northern California, Utah, Oregon, Washington, and some of British Columbia. And those experiences, I think, deeply shaped me as the pagan that I am now today. I remember hiking and having this love and appreciation and deep connection to nature and being so profound by it all. And I still have those experiences now when I go camping. And when I go on nature walks and stuff, it's still the same. So it's strange because there's that nostalgic aspect to it, but there's also just this other aspect where I kind of just feel like I have always been this way. And so let's see. So that's basically kind of how things went to be in my childhood, and just working with Goddess and working with that type of energy. And then as I became a teenager, that's when I found paganism. And I remember in junior high school specifically, I would want to do reports on mythology. I would make up short stories and the characters would be named after deities in my stories. They'd be named after deities from various cultures. And I always was just so interested in like goddess energy and having that kind of sovereign feminine power. And I'm not even really sure where it came from. It just was there. And sorry, I'm still researching or looking at my notes here. And what ended up pulling me to paganism is I started to then venture into learning about mediumship and psychics. And so I read pretty much all of Sylvia Browne's books. And then I would go to the library after school and just absorb all this stuff. And I would wander the metaphysical section. And that's when I found books on Wicca. So I studied Wicca. and I was Wiccan for a while, and then I felt that Wicca was too rigid, so I then kind of morphed into paganism and eclectic paganism, and ever since then my path keeps kind of evolving and changing and adapting, and but that started when I was 15 years old. And yeah, so then now we're going to get into the 20s. I started to fully practice witchcraft in high school, and then I started to really get into personified deity in my 20s, and I was a little bit apprehensive to do so for a while because I was so afraid that it would be compared to Christianity, and my brain was kind of like, well, what's so different? But then as I got older, I was like, why does it matter? And so the first goddess that I had a connection to was Kuan Yin. I was with my mother and we were garage sale shopping, and I found a statue of her, and I bought it. I don't even know why I bought it. I just did. I was like, she's beautiful. And I distinctly remember my grandmother traveled all over China when I was a baby, and she brought back so much stuff from China. Her house had statues of Kuan Yin all over the place. So maybe it was that nostalgic familiarity with that goddess, but I was pulled towards having an image of her. And so I worked with her for quite a while through my 20s, my very early 20s. And then I was looking into the origins of my name, how it's spelled, because as you guys know, Dana is most commonly spelled D-A-N-A, but my name is D-A-I-N-A, and my mother had said, I just wanted a Scandinavian spin to it, but I was like, I feel like there might be something more to this. So as I looked into it, I found the goddess Danu, which in here it says Dana, but she's also known by Dana. And she is that Mother Earth goddess. So then suddenly there became a face to this Mother Earth that I've known since I was a child. And so I worked with her for pretty much through all my 20s. And then when I was about 26, I think, I was in this, the 20s are complicated. I was in this horrible mess of depression and trying to understand myself. Sorry, kitty, being trouble. Luna? Luna? Come on, Luna. 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 Come on. You know what she does? She goes and scratches at my son's door who's sleeping. She's trouble. I was in the throes of this whole identity crisis that happens to a lot of people in the 20s, because you're kind of told that you need to be so successful and have a career or start a family and just know what you want. And I didn't. I never did. And topped that off with mental illness, anxiety and depression, and being diagnosed with endometriosis. And I was a wreck. I didn't know how to deal with anything that I was experiencing. And I felt so I didn't have any of my power. I didn't, and it was horrible. Focus, camera. So then came the Morgan. And I know that she came into my life to try and get me to find the warrior within myself and to pull me out of this horrible, several year-long deep depression that I had been in. I've been battling depression since I was 14 years old. And I still do, of course. But those few years in my mid-20s were, aside from high school, probably some of the worst of my life. And I came to a point when I was 28 where I had this massive shift where my perspective completely changed on how I looked at life and how I looked at myself and how I looked at what I wanted and how I looked at my depression it all changed. Within that same year, I became pregnant with my first son, and that also changes your perspective, becoming a mother. So that was where the Morgan stood for me, was to prepare myself for that time in my life where I suddenly was going to just realize that I needed to fight for myself because no one else was going to do it. And when I was 30, 30, and just about to become pregnant with my second son is when I was suddenly drawn to Freya. And I had always thought that eventually I would work with the deities of my bloodline, because I am mostly Scandinavian. And I knew that this would happen at some point. I just didn't know when or how. And I just had this sudden pull towards her, and I bought a statue of her, which I honestly think if you buy a statue of a deity, it's a pretty big commitment. So, so I bought her a statue, and I researched her, and I just was pulled to understanding and knowing everything I could about her. And Freya continues the same thing that the Morgan had for me, where it's that love and compassion for myself, that warrior, that fire, that but also that gentleness, because she's the goddess of love, but she's also the goddess of war, and she's the leader of the Valkyries. There's so much power behind her, and I saw that power, and I started to turn it inward to myself. And that is what working with Goddess for me is that it is seeing me as the aspect of personified deity. Not to say that I am, special or anything like that, of course. I'm just saying that there's something to be said about claiming your own power, and I feel like working with goddess energy is what that does to you. And then the next deity that I have come across that I didn't really ever expect to have happen is La Santa Muerte. And this is new. She has come into my life within the last probably 7-ish months. And I've talked about her a little bit on this channel too, and I was really nervous to work with her. There was a lot of synchronicities that all led up to it, which was interesting. And that's the thing that happens with deity, I've noticed, is that there will be all these synchronicities that will start to happen, and you're just like, well, this is bizarre. So that's why it's important to write stuff down too if you start experiencing a lot of synchronicities, because you'll notice them, and the more you notice them, the more they happen. Kittens, Weights, and Tarot, Tara at Kittens, Weights, and Tarot just recently did a wonderful video on this, and I'll link that down below too, for you guys to see, about just kind of when deities connect with you and kind of seeing the signs, and then sharing her personal experiences. I loved listening to that. I love listening to people's personal experiences with deity. But so that's kind of basically how I have my whole story of how my journey to the goddess and working with goddess energy, and where it has led me now. And I work with several goddesses at the moment at the same time. I also work with a god, which is Odin, but I did not start working with Odin. He's the only god I've worked with. I did not start working with Odin until about the same time that I started working with Freya. Odin kind of came into my life through a dream, and then his presence became quite strong when I was pregnant with my son, my second son. So that's basically, in a nutshell, my journey to the goddess. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Once again, please subscribe and please check out Inner Divine Tarot, and also please check out Supportive Tarot. They're both fantastic channels, but this video is specifically a video response to Inner Divine Tarot, since she's the one that did the Journey to the Goddess topic. And then once again, I will also put the link down below for the video that Tara at KittensWeightsandTarot did on this subject, kind of working with deity specifically and how deity calls to you. That's it for this video today, guys. Oh my gosh, why are you out of focus? I know it's kind of rambling, I know it's kind of long, but I really hope you enjoyed listening to this or watching it, whatever you're doing. I hope you all had a wonderful full moon. I recently redid my altar, which I will be making a video for that as well soon here, so you guys can see what I have with that going on. Blessed be. I hope you have a beautiful day.